There's only the Bergen Record has one business reporter. We've got two, and then there's the business trade publications, business to business publications in New Jersey. So there's not a lot of us out there. So it's good that the Asbury Park Press still thinks that covering local business is important. Um, and we get a lot of hits on the paper on the website too. So I write a column called "What's Going There," which is essentially literally what's going into shopping centers and storefronts. People love to know what's happening in their local communities, and especially with businesses. So, for instance, is an old Pizza Hut that's been empty for a year. What's gonna go in that place? So, like Trader Joe's is gonna go in. I mean, not Trader Joe's. Uh, Texas Roadhouse is going into one in Tom's River. Now you think that that's such a big deal, but if a lot of people want to know that kind of stuff, so my job is to try to find out about it before anyone else does, and so that means doing a lot of reporting and developing sources among commercial real estate brokers and trying to find out, uh, you know, what's going in there, and whether it's a building that's been empty for 10, 15 years, an old food town supermarket. Um,
Yeah.
in Tom's River, it's going to be a restaurant depot, which is it's like a supplier to restaurants and food companies. So that building was empty for 10 years, and I found out that what's going to go in there. It's a small thing, but those types of stories take a lot of reporting to find out about. And part of it's from what Tom was telling me, you guys are going to be doing some meeting coverage. So some of that is,
Hey, Dave, do you mind if I just
yeah,
just so I can you just like reintroduce yourself?
sure.
Well, first I'll talk. Hey everybody, how's it going? All right, so now we're at the end of the semester, and we have this meeting assignment, which is our major assignment. We actually listened to a pre-recorded tape of our old buddy Thomas Peel,
Hmm.
who had some unconventional methods for covering meetings, but now we're going to listen to David Willis, who's a much more practical man. Dave and I go back 40 years, almost exactly. Probably, probably the. I'm going to kiss your buddy a little bit here, Dave. Probably has like more integrity than probably anybody I know, and works his butt off. Um, he's been at the Edinburgh Press since 1995. Gannett, for the last 37 years. Gannett is a parent company to a number of many newspapers in the United States, a bunch in New Jersey. So what he's going to do though is he'll talk about a little bit about what he does and that sort of thing. He was just heard some of that, but he's also going to talk about like his approach to meeting coverage, and which I guess Dave you still do, right? You still cover
From
me.
time to time, yeah. I mean, I don't go to a lot of meetings anymore, but I do have to cover them, and then we can talk about that too.
Yeah. And this is interesting. Yeah, or Dave, I meant to ask you, like, whatever happened to the old Azure Park Press building? This was like a state-of-the-art newsroom that was like had
Yeah,
like
so
inside of.
the old building was knocked down in 2014.
Oh my
I
God!
believe we left there. It's really a pretty bad place. When I was, I mean, it's old. It was old by the time we left it, and I had water dripping on my head and on my stuff on my desk, and
Really? Wow.
yeah, Time was actually hell.
Wow.
Hell.
'Cause I remember when they built that. They built it in '86, and it was
Yeah, yep.
like,
Beautiful building, and they had moved the presses out, and they
uh,
actually, put a lot of design studio work in there when they were consolidating copy editors and page designers around the East Coast. They put them all into where the presses were. So yeah, and now it's going to be a quick check hotel and some other stuff.
that's right, because you know the what's going to go on. Dave, it's interesting. So Dave covers a lot of. Dave's a business reporter. One of the things Dave covers is basically it's very interesting to me actually because I'm like one of those people that finds it very interesting. Um, Whenever they're like someplace leaves or whatever, there's a building that's abandoned. You've probably seen them on a highway or off on like state highways especially, or kind of maybe you grew up in a town where, you know, you had a supermarket that was there forever. I had one Stop and Shop in Metuchen, it's gone, so I have to drive like it may sound trivial, but now I got to freaking drive it through Route One traffic to get the shop right. It kind of sucks. But some of the things you were mentioning before about that was actually like really important to me. Some of the stuff that would go in that would be built in like Tom's River or Point Pleasant because that's where I grew up.
Yep.
I remember when there was only one McDonald's in the area, and
Hmm.
when they built a McDonald's in Point Pleasant. Oh my God, it was
Well,
a huge.
Tom, the OB Diner is opening up in a few weeks.
I didn't even know
The
it
opening.
closed again. I didn't
Yeah,
even.
they closed. They got sold. Yeah.
I remember when it burned in 1980.
Hmm. Yep.
I got
Yep.
pictures. Anyway, so Dave, maybe you want to look, would you mind going into a little bit of your bio again, if you don't mind?
Sure, sure. Okay, so I'm a business writer. I cover I do this commercial real estate column called "What's Going There" in Monmouth and Ocean counties. Very popular. I cover retail, so um, supermarkets especially. So the company is really interested in grocery coverage. So I do a lot of supermarket stories covering ShopRite and Stop and Shop and Acme and all the food stores. I cover chain restaurants, so that's why we have a my colleague covers local small restaurants. I cover chains because they're mostly located on highways, really, and corridors. So that kind of leaves to me, and covering local restaurants is a huge, very difficult um, beat for one person, which is what my colleague Sarah does. Um, and so I cover small business too. So if you have a little gift shop you're opening up, or consignment store, or clothing store, or whatever, you'll contact me, and I'll write about it, perhaps. So, um, yeah, and then and but in doing all this stuff, it still requires the basics of reporting at meetings and going to town halls and pulling paperwork because we don't use I don't use anonymous sources for anything. This isn't the White House we're covering here. This is really local news. And this type of stuff doesn't really go for anonymous sources or background or anything like that. It's literally, I write stories when leases are signed, and it's a question of finding out when the lease is signed, and there's all sorts of NDAs non-disclosure agreements that are signed by brokers and landlords and all that kind of stuff. So I have to figure out ways of getting that information some other way. So, yeah, when Amazon Fresh comes in, and now they're all gone, by the way, but when they're coming in, they don't tell anybody. How do I find out that there's a store going in there? And it might be a big grocery like Amazon Fresh or something else.
So like those sorts of things are actually the sort of the things that would come up in some of the meetings we might cover. I think we have a couple of people covering planning board meetings and things like that.
Yeah.
So how would maybe like a planning board address that sort of thing? Would you say?
So, so you guys are really, really lucky. So when Tom and I first started covering planning board meetings,
Yeah.
there was no internet really. So we had to go and either have the agenda faxed to me by a nice planning board clerk, or you'd have to go to town hall and look at it, or you'd have to go to legal notice and look at it.
Everybody
Now
know?
everything's on,
Does everybody know what he means by faxed?
yeah, right.
Just checking.
And now everything's online. So I can go online, and like for instance, right now I'm tracking a ShopRite that's going to be going into Manalapan on Route 33. Um, and I need to know when it's going to be before the planning board. So I just go online, look at the documents, and then call up the planning board clerk and see if I can get the documents emailed to me. That would be great. And they'll send me some documents that I can quote. All these documents are public records. You can walk into any planning board office and ask to see a planning board document for an application. Those tend to be site plans. They might be an application filled out by the developer that says who the developer is and what they plan on doing. I personally like planners reports. I'm not so interested. I mean, you can see the full site plan with all they'll have the first page will have the demo, the current state of the thing. Another page will have how they're going to demolish buildings. Another page will have, like a drawing of the plan that they're going to do with the building they're going to put on the property, and and you'll want to know how many square feet the building is. And oftentimes it'll say, if it's a restaurant, how many seats are in the restaurant? Is there a patio outside? Is there a drive-through window outside? Going to be on this thing. How many drive-throughs are there going to be? Most chain restaurants now have double drive-through lanes, and so that'll be on the document. But what I really like, as I mentioned, are the planners or engineers reports, and these are reports that town the town's the town professionals that are employed by the town when they get all the documents and they analyze them and they come up with things that they need that the developer will need to do and need to show before the planning board. But they'll do a full description of everything. So it'll all be there and written. It'll all be there written. I don't need to go open a map and start looking at small little print and start analyzing it all. It'll be right in the document, and it's usually about 10 pages. You really only care about the description of the thing, the description of the plan. There'll be like all sorts of when you go before the plan, we look at the planning board document, there's all sorts of jargon about setbacks and how far away the building has to be from the street and how much parking spaces per, you know, are supposed to be there versus how many they're trying to get, how much trees are on the property. I mean, everything you can think about. There's rules for zoning rules, which basically apply to all development in a specific area.
Hey, Dave,
Uh,
that's one thing I neglected to teach the class. I taught my other class this, zoning. Can you talk about zoning? Like, basically what happens is, every town has zones. They didn't used to have zoning. So what would happen back in like 80 years ago or so in some towns, they would put like, you see there's a lot of towns in North Jersey. You see, they'll put like in Hackensack, for instance, New Jersey, they put like a metal shop in the middle of a neighborhood, or they built a neighborhood around a metal shop. So, but they stopped that from happening, and they basically put commercial zones for businesses, that sort of thing. And so businesses have to be built there with certain requirements. Residential zones. I think this university has it's like its own zone. Then there's an industrial zone that's actually in I would say the southern part of the city. That's where they put a lot of obviously like whatever factory related things that they might have. But they also like to put things like adult bookstores and and go-go bars and things like that, and also dispensaries usually end up in that area because you don't want to get the dispensaries near the schools. Oh my God, there's also school zones. So, David, you want to talk about?
yeah, so that is really just the rules for development.
Right.
And one of the things you have to really figure out when you're writing stories about this is not to really talk too much about it in stories. So the amount of detail that you're going to get is going to come at you. It's going to be a lot of it. I mean, it's going to be, as I mentioned, setbacks. This is the kind of words you never use. I mean, at least for me, unless it's a real issue if sometimes development can cause real issues with the community. People who live around there, then you'll be covering the residents who are PO'd that they're going to have a big supermarket right in front of their development, and they're going to say, well, it's 20 feet from the back of my yard or that kind of thing. You might get into those kind of issues about setbacks and all that kind of stuff, but you really have to not use the jargon of it all. So it comes down to asking questions about what all this means. And so you get a planning board document. You look at it. You go to the internet. You look up what setbacks are. You do as much reporting as you can about what this means, so you can clearly talk about it in regular language to a regular person who has no idea what you're talking about. So really removing all sorts of planner jargon. You'll see it when you look at it. It'll say talk about setbacks. Um, um, it'll talk about pavement. It'll talk about coverage areas. It'll talk about all this kind of stuff. How much pavement can be on the property and all this business. So what I do is really only care um, because of the nature of what I cover. It's usually highways and things like that. So I only care about what's going in there, how big it is, um, who the tenant is, who's going in, what's the company name, what's the business that's going to be going in, if it's a retail building or an office building, or a warehouse. I'm looking for who's going to go in. So that's important. Um, um, that's what people want to know, and you have to understand who your audience is, who you're writing for. So if you're writing for local people, that's the stuff they're going to want to know about. Sometimes you'll get a whiff that this is a controversial application. And so you might have some residents come to the meeting to talk about how they don't like it or to ask questions about it. Sometimes residents groups hire lawyers to fight things and to fight the application. So that's part of the story. And you can talk to the lawyer about that, about how it's going to cause too much noise or it's too close. Oftentimes they'll sue to stop things. Planning boards are really kind of like courtrooms. They're kind of, it's quasi judicial. So there's protocols and there's the way asking questions and everyone's sworn under oath and that kind of stuff. So if you go to a meeting, you'll they'll tell you everything about it at the meeting. I mean, um, um, there'll be witnesses like the architect will get up and talk about it. A planner will get up that they hired and said that will talk about why this is a good thing for the community, why this is a good thing for that space. They'll talk about the background of the property, how long it's been there. It's been empty for 10 years, and now we're going to build a beautiful warehouse on top of it, or we're going to be a beautiful office building on top of it because that's better than what was there. And if it is bad, if there's some residents who have a problem with it, it's still better for the community. It's an overall benefit, is how they talk about it. So um, so that'll be um, good. But one of the things that I was thinking about this before, and the way I have to do things now, is that I have to usually go in blind. So there's not a lot of people covering meetings anymore. In the old days, you'd go to the paper and you would open up and you hear about something, and then maybe there's been five stories written about it that you can pull from and get background from and all this kind of stuff. Now you kind of have to go in and do all the background yourself. You go on the line, maybe patch, maybe tap into, or one of these other websites has written about it. They might help you get a sense of things, but then you have to re-report everything. You have to get the background. You have to find out what's going on. You have to try to find out all, not in incredible detail, but a sense of where this was. So, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, I had to cover a um, um, Seaside Council, Seaside Park Council meeting about um, uh, South Seaside Park, which is part of Berkeley Township, big town in Ocean County. These residents wanted to become part of Seaside Park, which is literally 2 blocks over. I mean, it's very close. They're closer to Seaside Park than they are to Berkeley Township, which is actually across the Barnegat Bay. So I had to cover a meeting because one of our reporters is out on disability, and I had to figure it out. I mean, looking up stuff. You can go online, you pull all the agendas down, you pull all the accompanying information down, try to figure out, um, you know, what's going to happen, and then try to go in and have all the background before you go in. And then my problem was I was doing a Zoom call. So oftentimes there are Zoom meetings, and I live here in Monroe, and the thing is almost an hour and a half away, and it was, 11 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night kind of meeting. So I listened to the Zoom for it, and that's a problem because I didn't know who was talking half the time.
Yeah.
So you really have to know. But it's okay. I had a tool that I use now. I use Otter for everything, all my interviews. So I'm sitting here with my Otter on my iPad, and it's transcribing the meeting as we go along, so I can concentrate on who's talking and figuring out. Did he say the first name of that guy? Did they say hi Tom, or did they do something where they were talking about who the guy was? So I found myself spending a lot of time figuring out who the people talking were. But no big deal. Figure it out. But you know, I had to make sure I knew all the stuff that I could, because I wouldn't have an opportunity to talk to anybody after the meeting. And that's the one thing about not going, is that you can't walk up to the mayor or the administrator and say, "Hey, what was that again?" Or how was that? How was that? How'd that work? Because you don't have an opportunity to actually ask questions of the people, um, to make sure you clearly understand it, that you break through the jargon, that when you write a story, it has no jargon in it whatsoever.
Yes.
That requires either a knowledge of how things work, which I have a sense of, and but also being able to ask questions. So when you leave that meeting, you're able to fully um, explain it to, like, as I always say, grandma in Utah. Because if you don't get them then you might not get them again. Um, So you have to take advantage of the people when they're in front of you. And that means walking up to them afterwards and asking questions. They don't want to see a mistake, hopefully, and you don't want to make one. So that's really, really important. Um, and that's where oftentimes going in, these days, planning boards and councils, they print everything out for you half the time. Or it's online. You can look at it heavily. You can refer to documents. Documents are a primary source, almost better than people to a degree, and usually get your answers that way.
You know,
I know I ramble a lot.
it's interesting you mentioned about jargon, Dave. I guess setbacks probably, you hear these terms at these meetings and you're like, for the longest time, I would be like, what? But like setbacks deals with like spacing between buildings and that sort of
Mhm.
thing.
And between the streets,
And the
things like that.
streets, yeah.
And
So it's like, that's what you have to think of. You have to think of like, okay, so, you know, uh, sometimes people have like, you know, short front yards, other people have longer front yards, so, when you have like a lot of building, that sort of thing, you're probably gonna see a lot of smaller front yards, that sort of thing. And if you have a busy street, that's gonna be a problem. So,
so, so my view on that stuff is, unless, and Tom, go by what Tom says, but in terms of your assignment, but my view was, unless someone's making a big deal out of it, no one cares. So unless it has to do with a residential property, or neighbors complaining about how close it is, and maybe the board needs to grant the developer an exception to that rule that says how much space there is between the two properties, it's called a variance, but that's a word you never use in a story. Unless that really comes up as a thing, um, that's a part of your story and that's relevant to your audience. I don't think any of that stuff matters, but you have to know what it means. You have to know how to translate that into regular speak, just to be able to do the work. so that you know when it's a problem and when it's important. And you can make that decision that it's not that important. So, for instance, there's all these developers, they have to publish legal notices in the paper before the meeting. Those are great sources to use. They'll tell you, they're meant to inform neighbors essentially about what's going to happen next door and the community. So it'll have some bare bones information there, but it will also list all the exceptions and all the rules and all the stuff about setbacks. It'll be right in that paper. They're helpful in the fact that they have some details that you can use. They might have how big the building is. It might have, the address. It will have the address of the building, and who the developer is, and that kind of stuff. But it has a lot of that jargon in it. And but I don't feel the need to put a lot of that stuff in my stories because my people who I know who read my stories, and I'm very knowledgeable about who those people are and what they're looking for me, looking for from me, looking, yeah. So I don't find the need for that stuff. And we also have local reporters. So if there's a local, we have municipal reporters, and everyone has to eat, right? So they do the stories um, on if there's a um, big controversy with development. I cover from Matawan, which is I cover all commercial development from Matawan to Little Lake Harbor. So if you go on the Parkway, that's probably about 80 miles. So I am unable to do big controversial stories about controversial developments. Those that really go for the purview of the municipal reporter who covers those towns. And there are not many of them left. There are a couple. But those would tend to be big stories that rise through the chatter that they're going to be want to work on themselves, and they have the ability and the time to track those stories through the process. Like for instance, my colleague Dan Waddell in Eatontown covers Eatontown, and he's writing about the big Monmouth Mall redevelopment project. Um, he also covers the Netflix in Fort Monmouth
All right.
because he has the time and the sources to track that and to write the hell out of it every time it burps. Well, I'm kind of all over the place because I've got, this story here, and then I've got to go over there, and I got to do this, and I got to do that. So it's just a matter of things. But I love, I mean, if I was going to cover a meeting, I'd prefer to cover a planning board meeting. I don't like talking to local politicians anymore. I did that for over 10 years, and I don't like doing it. So I became one of the reasons I became a business reporter.
Yeah, right. Um, so, but I guess one of the things you do have to do, Dave, is you do have to cover council meetings.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah.
Um, and I know a bunch of you actually are covering. I gave them a choice because I'm 8:30 in the morning, so we can't exactly go to the meetings together. But I gave them the choice to cover like student governing association meetings, which I know you're also familiar with.
Yep. I covered the Livingston College Government Association when I was at Targum
Yeah. Now they have,
and the Board of Governors.
and now they have. Yes, there's actually a board of governors meeting. I don't think it's actually happened yet. Did we cover that?
Nice.
Anybody,
Okay.
anybody covering that? But anyway, there's one of those. And then now they have what's called the Rutgers University Student Assembly because
Okay.
they don't have individual colleges anymore. A bunch of people.
Okay.
So I guess it's not quite the council like a council meeting, but
No, it's all the same. I mean, they should talk about what they're going to be talking about,
yeah. I mean,
and you can.
they can get kind of interesting sometimes because I guess this class has heard me say this over and over again. They had a big controversy like a couple years ago when they took away Dunkin' Donuts in Livingston. So
Okay.
they
Yeah.
got very upset. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting meeting,
I
So,
get it. Yeah.
but so in that way, it kind of does work like a council meeting. But how would you approach? Would you say like? I mean, I know some of this you covered already, but like, how would you approach like a council meeting? Like, some of the things you talked about, like you actually
So
you check the internet.
so
You,
so So some of the same things are the same things. So first you go and find out what the agenda is,
Right.
and you get a copy of the agenda, and then try to find out if there's resolutions. Like maybe the board of governors has a resolution that they're going to be approving or whatever. You get a copy of the resolution, but try to get it before the meeting, so you have it with you, so you see it there. And then when you scan the agenda, you're looking, okay, that's a good story. They're gonna we'll use the Dunkin' Donuts for instance. They're going to approve a lease for the student center to have a business come in, whether it's Jersey Mike's, whether it's a Cava, whatever. They're going to approve that lease. Um, and so then going in what the story is. You go to the meeting, but you have a background already. You've already done your work on the internet. You tried to background your story as much as you can, so you know what you're getting into before you go, hopefully. And then once again, you guys are lucky. I had to used to have to use notebooks and write down quotes and everything as they're speaking. And the brain only remembers 8 words at a time as you're writing, so you got to write really fast, and it makes your handwriting terrible. I can barely read my own handwriting now. But you guys have you tape. I tape things. I tape everything. Every call, every conversation, not to play gotcha with people, but just to make sure I'm really, really accurate. And it allows me to concentrate on things. So um, I'm not worrying about who that person is while I'm writing down their notes. I've got something is transcribing as I'm watching it transcribe, and I can go up and get the names later. But the most important thing is what I said. Make sure you know exactly everything by the time you leave the meeting, by the time you walk out the door. Um, you're going up to the president or the student governing president or whatever and asking questions. Or if there was a particular person who interested you in their talk, their perspective during the meeting, you go up to that person, you ask more questions, you make sure make sure you get their name spelled correctly. And you make sure you have all that information, and you know that there's two different ways to spell Stephen. There's two different ways to spell all these other people. So you spell their first name, you spell their last name, find out how old they are, all that kind of stuff. Because that's the stuff you're going to need, and you need to take advantage of it while you're standing in front of them. Because tracking them down and calling and you know waiting for calls back and all this kind of stuff isn't fun. Hopefully, you're writing for a class, so you don't have to worry about writing a story in 2 hours, or writing it when you get home in an hour. Um, so you have some time. It's good to get phone numbers if you can, about who you're talking to in case you have follow-up questions. What I always tell people when I'm interviewing them or talking to them, I said, I don't really screw around. So I don't guess. I don't think I know what you said. I don't think I know the context you said it. I know the context you said it. And if I have questions about it, I'm going to have to call you and ask you, or I can't use it. So if you want to get that cool detail, if you want to get that cool perspective in the story, you got to make sure you have it. You got to make sure you have it clearly and well done. So that means going up to the person at the meeting, talking to them, um, 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 at the meeting, whether it's a resident. And remember, if you go to council meetings, everything is on the record. So when someone gets up to the microphone, says, "Hi, I'm Tom Davis from blah blah street," and they freak out about it, something or other. You're quoting them. They're going to spell their name for the record, so you're covered. They might have a really great, interesting thing to say about something, and then you walk up to them afterwards, or when they sit down, and you say, "Can I get your name?" or whatever. You're double checking something. They say, "Well, I don't want my name in the paper." Sorry, dude. You spoke at a council meeting.
That's right.
Done. I mean, so for instance, um, um, in Manchester Township, there's an old ShopRite. It's a pretty old ShopRite, and it's small. And I, I know that there's going to be a new ShopRite built in Tom's River. It's going to be moved, and I hadn't really used it because I don't really have it. I have it, but I don't have it. You know what I'm saying? I don't have it confirmed. I don't have it, solid. But when I get to the point of knowing something where I think I know it. So, but I can't use it because it's not on the record. So anyway, at the council meeting, I wasn't there. Karen Wall was there, Tom.
Oh, wow.
Karen was at this
She's everywhere.
patch reporter who's very good, was at a meeting
She's everywhere.
this lawyer gets up. Oh no, a resident gets up and says, "Hey, you know, that shop right is so old and it's so run down, and the shopping center's in terrible shape, and blah 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 blah, blah," and complaining about it. And the township administrator says, "Well, a lawyer came to town and said that they were going to have an application before the planning board in a few months to move that shop right to Tom's River,
Ah,
to the old Walmart site." And you know what? No one did. ShopRite didn't want to say that. ShopRite, I'm sure, I know for a fact that ShopRite did not want anyone to know that they were moving their ShopRite um, to another town, maybe 2 miles away, an old little site where they were going to put a Walmart many years ago. But sorry, suckers.
yeah, right.
The guy mentioned in the public meeting, that is out now.
So,
So Karen wrote the story, and I read about it, which annoyed me, but I read about it. She wrote the story because it's news and it's on the record. So there's no off the record at council meetings. You hear something, someone says something controversial, someone says something that's perks your ears up. That could all of a sudden become the story. I don't think Karen, and I talked with Jean, who covers Tom's River for us, and she just happened to be there, and she was listening,
that's right.
and she came with the story. Now it's small. I think it was the little news part was like 3 paragraphs, but it was a big deal because everyone wants to know. You shut supermarkets. That's why I cover them really heavily. Crazy because everyone goes there. Everyone doesn't want to spend money on food. Everyone wants to save things. Everyone uses coupons and all this kind of stuff. So
Oh,
they care about that.
I'm sorry, Dave. A lot of times when you're actually on a beat, you talk about covering meetings, you actually will cover multiple towns. He mentioned Karen Hall, who I hired like more than 10 years ago at Patch. She's person, oh my gosh, she covers like every freaking thing.
That was a lot of, yeah.
Easily the best reporter, I think, at the whole organization. And it's interesting to say that because she covers both towns, Tom's River and Manchester. So
Yep.
I can see that spiraling on both patches, upward.
Yep.
And but yeah, and you also mentioned about supermarkets. We had this discussion earlier. I mean, another thing about supermarkets. I mean, this may seem like a little bit mundane and everything, but this is the stuff. I'll say it, this is the shit people care about. More than anything. Okay. I mean, I was just talking to Dave before about how they closed down a Stop and Shop in Metuchen, and how you know I use the term again that my wife uses, move my cheese, from the trap. Basically, now I have to go, I know this sounds like a first world problem, but now I have to drive all the way to freaking Edison to go to the nearest supermarket, and there's like massive traffic on Route 1 always. I gotta go take back roads. So this stuff
Do,
that
do,
he's
do,
talking about, this is like
do you
a,
know that shop right on Oak Tree Road?
yeah, yeah,
Oh, the
right.
worst.
Oh no, I'm sorry, not that one. No, there's a shop right. It's like a really old shop right. It sucks. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
dirty, and the freaking self. What do they call those self machines? What are they called?
I'll check out.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
they never work.
yeah,
People need to have help, and
yeah,
I know there's starving children in other countries. I get it, but anyway, so I have to take like back roads to get there, and the whole thing. When I used to be able to just kind of slither out, grab something really quick. Now actually I do Instacart a lot because I'm just like, I'll pay an extra freaking $20.
right.
I want to put up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, supermarkets are very, very. I love covering supermarkets.
Yeah,
I love writing about supermarkets. It's one of my favorite things, which is weird, but I do like it, and so does my bosses. So it gets massive hits, and grocery is actually a, tr- a topic that the company as a whole, all 300 papers are very heavily into. So anyway, so yeah, so going and finding and going to meetings and listening for weird things, letting the meeting flow, and if something else comes up that's more important, that's what your story is. You can always come back later and write follows. When I covered Brick for many years, and I've also covered Manchester and Lakehurst and Middletown. Um, you go to a meeting and there might be four stories. So you're covering multiple stories, writing multiple stories out of one meeting. So you for the next day or for later that day, you write whatever is most important, whatever the biggest story is. Like for instance, for Karen, that was the ShopRite story.
yeah,
And then hopefully she probably got other story ideas and other things to write about from that meeting. And she probably had to pivot to write about the ShopRite and not do something else, probably. And that gave her more stories. So these stories can help fuel things. And the thing that you always need to remember is, as I always say, who you're writing for. You're writing for regular people. You're writing for taxpayers. You're not writing for the government. You're not writing for the council. You're not writing for the mayor. But the mayor is not important. His. What's important is who you're representing there, and whether the residents like you or not. I mean, it can be you can get a lot of crap, and people don't understand really how hard it is to do all this, and so because you're dealing with all the crap, the lies, mayors lying to you outright, and hoping that you won't check it, hoping you won't double check the facts. Hoping you won't double check the lawsuit that's been filed against them, or that they filed, and you have to look at legal papers and things to get to the truth because you really have to make sure you're checking everything and that you're not being used and effed with. And because there are definitely people and mayors out there who will try to say, "Oh, you don't know what you're doing. You're new, and I can use you, and I can tell you something."
manipulation.
It just completely screw with your head, which is why I don't really, I'm not into it. I've been doing this a long time, and I don't play games. I really don't like when people laugh at me. So too busy, too busy.
Yeah.
Uh, so anyway, questions? I don't know
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Willis?
about anything really. I don't care.
Participation. um, well, I mean, I was trying to think. I mean, I know, Dave, I know this is going way back. And so, I mean, I remember when you used to cover the Livingston governing, was it Livingston student
Maybe
government?
it's LCGA. I was the Rutgers target correspondent.
What?
$20 a week, baby,
Funny,
for two stories. Yeah, yeah.
funny is they probably charge the same now. Um, my daughter says she's going to get involved in Targum. I don't know, but we'll
Oh,
see.
cool.
But, uh, what look, these student governing associations, like I've talked about before. I mean, they don't exactly have like any kind of like power other than talking,
Right.
and promoting and that sort of thing. And a bunch of people are covering those meetings. I mean, So, I mean, the board of governors at this, I find university is actually, it serves as almost like the council. They're the ones that approve the tuition hikes and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Again, we've talked about, it's funny, Dave, we've had these computers in here for like 15 years.
yeah, they look
Nobody
familiar to me.
ever uses them. I call them the Dunder Mifflin computers. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
The office.
yeah.
So anyway, like stuff like that, this is just like waste, just to kind of like laying around this classroom, but anyway, as far as like covering these student governing association meetings, I don't know if I can go back into recesses of your memory.
Well, so the Student Government Association, especially if they're advisory, what you can help to do is amplify their voice.
Right,
So you mentioned the Dunkin' Donuts in the student center. Very understandable. I mean, it's completely clear to people. So if the governing association is having an S fit, a shit fit about whatever it is, could be it could be the state of the campus. It could be the state of anything that students don't have any control over, really. And if they're talking about something, you can be there to amplify that voice
right,
and bring it to the attention of people. The counts, the provost's office or the governor's office, board of governors or whatever. I think in the old days, when I covered Ed Blaustein for many years, and you can almost call the guy up,
he was
almost.
he was the president of
He was the
university.
president of the university, so you
That
can
was Dave.
almost.
He was on some
So,
buildings.
so that's what it's all about.
Yeah,
When you're covering a student organization, you're amplifying voices, you're getting the issue in front of them. You're calling up the Rutgers News Service after the student the student governing association says, what about how come there's no more Panera bread in the student center? What happened? Because I mean, all the student, if I'm right, all the concessions are all franchise companies now, but it's like or or the food, people are having rotten food or expired. They're seeing expired milk cartons
right.
in dining halls or when they're going, whatever it is, what's going on. And that's your role when you're covering that kind of thing. It's just,
Chloe, I don't mean to.
yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned earlier she has an interesting situation. It was Chloe. You mind talking about it? You covered the Rutgers University Student Assembly, and what did they do again?
We
They
just like recapped all the acts that they have done this past year, this past school year.
that was pretty much what the meeting was. How
What
would
do you
you?
mean act?
Yeah,
What do you mean?
they recapped everything they did this year, right?
Okay.
How would you cover that, Dave? That sounds like almost like a God, I can't name of those meetings.
That sounds like I'd want to like slit my wrists open. Even if it's something with that. But okay, so you have to go to that. Maybe there's something that took off. Maybe there's something that rises above all that crap. Maybe there was something that was actually relevant
Very
to
good.
people that you can write about.
Yep.
I mean, you're gonna have to do if you get into this business, you know, um, best of stories, top hits for the top issues for the year.
Right.
If there was something that you find interesting, I mean, trust your gut. I mean, you kind of know what's important to you and what bores you. And maybe all of it bores you, but maybe there's a level of not of boredom that you can deal with, where it's not so boring. But that's what I would do. I would take two or three of the 20,
Right.
and because it's your story. You're not writing it for the Student Government Association. You're writing it for you and your audience. So you're allowed to think what's important. If they want to tell you what's important, if they want, they can write a newsletter. They can write their Student Governing Association newsletter and send it to every student, and then they can have their say. But when it's your story, you're in charge. You write it. It's your story. As long as you're accurate, as long as you are contextually correct in terms of explaining what their position is in their in the in the context that they're saying it, you're not kind of taking and using it for some other reason or some other issue. Um, that's what I would do. I mean, it's terribly boring. I would literally want to die. But
We're not advocating that, but we're.
right, but I mean natural causes. So a heart attack or something.
Sometimes there's buses, sometimes there's buses, they get in the way.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I don't know, maybe the signs got better, or maybe something. It's gotta be something that people can relate to, where it isn't just backslapping.
Yeah, right.
Um, they can backslap themselves. They can hire something. They can hire a PR person to do it for them and put press releases. But your story can be, um, what you want it to be. Um, and unless you're right, and as long as it's factual and kind of kind of down the middle, unless you're writing an opinion piece and you're writing that kind of thing, which is a different style of writing that I really don't know much about. I don't really do that kind of thing, but you can do that too if you want to.
It's funny.
Maybe they didn't do a lot of crap.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not. Maybe they're kind of a useless group. So maybe that's the piece you write, but it's different. It's not a news story.
I'm right. It's funny you say that, Dave, because I know what went wrong, but I had a student in like 2009. His name is Charlie Kravitol. I don't know if you know the name at all, but he.
Yeah. I know. I've never met. I think I've met the guy. He's in New Brunswick, right?
Yeah, he shows up.
Brunswick today.
He shows up to every New Brunswick meeting, and
Yeah.
he does his own publication called New Brunswick Today, and so it's like when I've told students before, well, you could probably get some background from New Brunswick Today, but just know that this guy Charlie Kravitol goes to meetings and yells, so he's become a gadfly. Dave, I really appreciate it. You're okay about coming back in at 10:20? That's all right.
Sure, I'll be here at 10:20.
Yeah. So yeah, Dave, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Awesome. Good luck.
And
It'll be fine.
everything will be fine.
Everything will be fine.
See here. That was the great description, Dave, on the Student Governing Association. What do they call the meetings at the beginning of the year? It's been a while for me, Dave.
I don't remember, Tom.
Well,
That's
you know,
too much.
yeah, it's where they form everything.
Oh, the reorganization meetings?
A reorg meeting. They call it
Reorg
reorg.
meeting. Terrible.
That's what that sounds like. It sounds like
Right.
that's what they come out. They have like a mayor come out and they make statements.
But at the council meetings, that's when they hire all their pals.
That's
So that's an important part. Something important to cover. Anyway, okay.
yeah.
Thank
It's
you,
like
guys.
it's like why is Tom Davis hiring Ed Davis? Anyway.
Bye.
Dave, thank you very much. I'll see you in about less than an hour. So
Okay, see you later, man.
all right, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Same address. Yep. Oops. All right, so like I said, I'm just trying to give everybody an opportunity to get a real world feel